Okay, so going back to the churches, um, was it recognized that certain churches belong to certain groups?
Yes, probably, because I know on the west side of town, there are 2 or 3 churches that were predominantly, or I think they still are, predominantly African American. Where the other churches were, I mean, the Episcopal Church, I remember a black family being in the church, coming there, but it was like, there was an Episcopal church on the west side, it was called AME Zion, I think, is an Episcopal church also. So they pretty much were separate. And I don't think it was done purposely. I think it was just because of the neighborhoods, people sort of stayed in their own neighborhoods at the time.
So it wasn't so much like by law, but just by the fact of the matter.
Right.
Well, St. Anthony's was.
Well, St. Anthony's and St. James was always the Irish Catholic Church, and St. Anthony's became the Italian Catholic Church. Because my friend that lived on Bank Street, because Bank Street area was also a predominantly Italian neighborhood for a while there. It was African American and Italian, and they went to St. Anthony's because there was the Italian church.
Now, today, do you feel like those churches are still predominantly Irish, Italian, African American, or has it all become rather mixed?
I'm not familiar totally with the church, but I think they are predominantly still African American. The Irish Catholic Church, St. James. St. Anthony's, I know, has a large Spanish population now. They seem to go, because they have Spanish services over there, which they don't have at St. James as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the black churches are still predominantly in the west side of town.
Now, something you had touched on before was that you said when we were little, we just went everywhere. Is that meaning like when you were a young kid, like everyone just ran around and like no one was so afraid where the kids were, don't go more than a block?
No, we used to go all over. I mean, the neighborhood, all right, when I was real little, we couldn't cross the street. But as I got older, you go across the street, there was an A&P over on Mama Street, a little one that we used to walk over to. Thought nothing of it. I remember one Halloween, we went all the way up to Bergen Place, going back and forth on all the side streets between Maple Avenue and Broad Street. So, I mean, we're talking all over town, basically, at that time. We'd go downtown and walk down Broad Street. Of course, when I got older, then I was allowed to go, because when I was younger, my parents wouldn't let me go that far because of, not that they were afraid, but because of age. I mean, you had to be a certain age that time to do certain things.
So did it just feel like things were safer?
I think so. Yeah, I even remember running around playing army with the boys and so in the neighborhood. And you're running around with guns, like your cap pistols or like air rifles and stuff like that. And nobody thought anything about that. No, the neighborhood people never. Maybe the neighborhood people were all keeping an eye on all of us. We don't know.
Well, at that time, you sort of knew your neighbors there, didn't you?
Yes, I could probably still tell you who were in the neighborhood the whole time, on my whole street at the time. Because part of that was my brother had a paper route, but he let me deliver the newspapers on the street. So I was able to get to know a lot of them.
And do you feel like it's that way today? Like, could you name your neighbors today?
I could probably name a handful of them, but that's about it. Before I could tell you everybody on this, between Pearl and West Street, I knew everybody's name. Now, I know my neighbors on each side of me, and I know a couple across the street, and that's about it.
Why do you think that is?
Well, one is when we were children, you were out more on the streets. Everybody knew everybody, and plus you would sit out in the summertime. You go out because most people probably didn't have air conditioning, so you would sit out. And as children, we were playing all over. We used to play in the schoolyard, so it was a lot. Now I don't think they let their children out that much, because I know the 2 children next to me, they play in their backyard all with each other. They're not playing with any of the other neighborhoods' children, and there's some the same age. And I found that out when I was teaching also, that the parents would not let them go out anymore. I mean, they'd walk them to school, or so I think they feel that there's not the safety anymore.
maybe it's because they don't know their neighbors.
It could be, they don't know the neighbors anymore, you don't know who, and with what's going on, you never know what to expect. When we were growing up, we knew, like I said, everybody. If they had children or they didn't have children, we knew who they were.
No, another thing is, a lot of people have said growing up here in Red Bank, like you'd go to the store, but you knew who owned the store. You'd go to the restaurant and you knew who owned the restaurant, who worked at the
Right.
restaurant. Can you speak to that, and can you speak to how it's changed?
Well, one, the stores downtown, there's hardly any stores downtown that were there before. I mean, Jack's Music Store's but the only thing that's still there. That and Nat's Jewelers. Other than that, everything is new. There were more like 5 and 10s, like you had Woolworths and Newberry's that as a kid you could go in there and I'm trying to remember which one it was. One of them had like a counter, but you could go and get a soda and sit at the counter and have the soda. About a block from my house was a place called DeFury's. It was a hardware store, but Ernie DeFury, who owned it, also had the largest selection of penny candies that you would want to have. So you'd go over there and get your penny candy. So you knew a lot more of the people. There was also a little market almost across from there. There was a mom and pop market, Rubicelli's, that you would know those people. Everybody knew you if you went to the A&P. And about being safer, I think of the fact that when I was in 6th grade, we were safety patrols and we were assigned to a corner. Like I was assigned to the one at Wall Street. And it was like, now they don't even let anybody over that. I mean, children to be safety patrols outside of the school. And as a safety patrol, the neighborhood students, the teachers would send us to the A&P and get things for them during the day. And when I became a teacher, I'm thinking, I don't believe that they actually did that. But at that time, they had no problem doing that. So it was different.
Yeah, I don't know if that applied today.
I don't know. As a teacher, you can't even let them out of your sight today.
No.
So.
So with all these businesses closing and changing, has there been a shift in like who owns them? Like is it still Red Bank people primarily owning these Red Bank businesses?
I don't think so, because I know some of them are people coming down from New York. I mean, I don't know who owns Tiffany's. I mean, but there are people that coming in from outside. More so. I mean, the Red Bank people, they may go down to the stores, but I don't know how many really do go down or own them anymore, because they mostly seem to be out-of-town people.
And do you think that's affected kind of like the community atmosphere? That it's not so much people in Red Bank own the businesses, which are patronized by Red Bank people, now it's kind of more commercial? Or?
I think so. It's more commercial, and I think you get more of the outsiders. I mean, I shouldn't say outside. People with more money to shop because the stores are more high class, if you want to call that, where the people that longtime residents in Red Bank, if still were more, I guess you'd say middle class. You did not have the money to shop in those kind of stores. I mean, I know I couldn't afford to shop in a Tiffany's or Coco Beret or any of those. Where before with Woolworths and even Carroll Stationery and things like that, you could easily go in and get school supplies, which now you can't even get school supplies or anything like that in town.
One thing I've noticed just from today is that Red Bank seems to be a town, like not a destination town, but it's a place people come to eat, shop, go home. Was this the same way back then? Or?
No, because growing up, you'd go downtown, you'd meet all your friends. You would see, I know my mom would go down with my godmother, and they would go down on a Friday night because the stores would be open till 9 o'clock, and go in and out of the stores, shopping, just wandered through the town, where I don't see that happening. And now you're coming to go to Tiffany, and that's it, or you're coming to have dinner, where before you would be wandering around and looking in and out of all the stores.
I heard that the police department was at one point pretty much locals, you know, that people grew up in town and then became police.
Right.
Is that still the same, do you think? Or?
I don't think so. I mean, I know I mean, I'm not sure who's actually on the police department as far as it, but a lot of them, when you hear about them, they're coming from another town. Where, like, when my brother got on the police force, we're talking early 70s, the 3 people he went on the police force with were all Red Bank people. And most of them had been. Now, a lot of them are coming from other places.
So was your other brother a fireman?
Both my brothers were firemen at one time. My father's family, there were 5 of them that were in Relief Engine Company. My father and his 4 brothers. And then my cousins, my brothers, all joined the same company. So my 2 brothers, and one was a police officer, is also a fireman, and my other brother, who's now a crossing guard, he's in the fire police now. He was a fireman when he first, a long time ago, then he moved to Florida, and when he came back, he became a fire policeman. But the family's always been involved with the fire department in town.
So the fire department is really sort of a family affair in Red Bank.
It was at one time. In the company that they were in, Relief Engine Company, between the Browers and the Colmorgans, there were, like, it was half the fire company. Were that same 2 families. I mean, other people were part of it, but those 2 families seemed to be the dominant ones in that fire company, where in other companies were other families that were dominated.
Whereas
Today, the fire companies are kind of falling apart a little bit. There's not as many, because it's volunteer. There's not as many, and there's more training that they are required to have. So it makes it a little harder for the people to find the time to volunteer. For some, and some people just don't want to volunteer. I mean, so that's a big issue, I think, everywhere though.
What year did you start teaching?
I taught in Middletown Township beginning in January of '74.
Okay.
And I just retired 6 years ago.
Oh wow. So back to what we started talking about earlier. You said, so growing up, the atmosphere in Red Bank was, if not accepting, it was. There was no animosity between, like, different races, ethnic groups. It was just kind of separate, but not.
It was separate and not. I mean, and I think I don't know, maybe it was just me, because my father was a milkman who delivered milk to the west side of town, where the large number of black people got their milk from. So for me, it was just part of life that you're in and out of that neighborhood, because I would help them deliver milk sometimes. But so that way we didn't think anything about it. And my father has always said, you know, they're just people, you just talk to them and that's it. But I mean, there probably was some between some people. But just, I never, like I said, I never noticed it, I never thought about it until the incident in the high school. And then when I thought about going to Washington, D.C. in the mid-'60s, right, not sure if it was, I think it was right before the Civil Rights Act of '65, where we were isolated because of the black students in the class. But we didn't think anything about it. I mean, to us, we were just all a bunch of 8th graders having a good time.
Now, did that incident make you come back and look at anything differently, or?
I didn't realize the fact that we were isolated when we were down there, because we were just kids. It was years later when I actually started, because I love history, started reading things. And I said, wait a minute, that's why we were in that hotel. That's why we had to have all our meals there. And we were treated that way. And then there was another incident. I worked for the recreation department when I was in college. And I was at the playground I was at was in the west side of town. I was up at where the Count Basie Field is. Mohawk Pond was what they called the playground. And the 3 counselors were the only white people on the playground. The majority, all the students were black, and we had taken a trip. And I remember one of we were going into Barnegat Lighthouse, and the person there stopped us because of the 3 or 4 black children that were with me, and said, you can't go in, you have to have an adult or something. I said, well, they're with me. And I put it that way, they're with me. And I remember getting a dirty look from this man because of the fact that here I was white having these 4 black children with me. And I mean, that much I remember, that I'm thinking about, you know, why, but it never dawned on me when I said they're with me, or they're mine. I don't remember which way I said it, because I know when I was teaching, it was always, the students were mine. I never thought anything about it. So, that incident.
And this is while you were teaching in the 70s?
It was even the 70s. Yeah, the playground was early 70s when I was in college at the time, working in the summer. And that was still in the 70s. I got the looks about that.
So, like you said, your father was a milkman.
Right.
And you would accompany him sometimes on deliveries. What was the scope of his milk route? Like, how much of Red Bank did you service?
Well, the one route he had serviced pretty much, I guess, almost all of Red Bank for his company. There were other companies that were delivering milk, but his company, we went east side, west side, the whole town. He had another route that took him over along Navesink River Road up through Monmouth Hills, which were the wealthier neighborhoods at that time. They still are, I think. But, so we did both sides, but in Red Bank, we pretty much did the entire town.
And you mentioned as a kid you like going to Woolworths or the hardware.
Newberry's and DeFury's Hardware,
The Fury's Hardware for
penny candy.
penny candies.
And it was really a penny. Yeah, they're really a penny
nickel
candy.
and dimes I learned about.
Yes, penny candy really was penny candy.
Unlike the dollar stores of today,
No,
everything's not a dollar.
right.
So did you, when we had our morning of memories, one of the African American participants had said that, you know, while she was growing up here, she didn't feel welcome going into these stores. By the time you were growing up, was it different? Did you notice that there were white and black people going to these stores, or was it?
Thinking back, and I don't think I noticed that, whether how many, like, I noticed the Shrewsbury Avenue did have a large number of, like, similar stores over there, which would have been in the black neighborhood. So they probably didn't come into town, and they may not have been welcome as much in town as, but then again, as a kid, you don't notice those kind of things.
No, of course. So about churches, growing up, was the church, was it a more vital part of the community? Was it more of a focal point? Do you remember doing a lot through the church, or more so than you would today, or the same amount?
No, I was in the choir, so I did that, but I don't remember any activities that were community-based, if that's what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the churches just pretty much kept to themselves, or if they had activities, they seemed to be more for their population. Where I think the churches now are trying to do more together.
So what types of would these churches hold a lot of activities for their congregation? Like, was church a big part of your life growing up?
Not really. I mean, we did, this Sunday, we do it to church, and since I was in the choir, I had choir practice one night a week. And when I got to be 12, and before I got confirmed, I had to go classes, like CCD classes, I know that's what they call them in the Catholic school. But you had classes before that.
Do you have any questions you can think of?
No, I don't think so.
Sorry.
Anything that you'd like to add about your growing up? Any memories that pop to your mind that?
Well, considering we're in the library, I remember coming here, checking out books, and one summer trying to read all of a certain kind of biography. And that room that we started in the back, there used to be a sunroom on the back, which was part of the children's room. So you had the glass windows overlooking the river when you would come check out books. Being involved in the summer reading program and things like that. That's why I think I volunteered down here, because the library's always been a big part of my life. And like this area used to be part of the children's room. The upstairs was more children's room. The other side, this side may not have been. This side may have been the adults, some of the adult section. But it was until I guess it was 67, 68, when they closed the library for a year to add that whole big addition on the back. Before that, the house was the only library when I was in grade school, basically. This is where I
Very
spent my
small,
time.
yeah.
It's very small. We spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time down here, especially in the summer, once I was allowed to walk down here by myself. I mean, before that, then I had to wait for somebody to bring me.
So were your brothers bigger than
My
you?
brothers, yes, there's 6 years between one of them and myself, and there's 10 years between the other one and myself. So I was kind of like, I was kind of avoided for a long time because I was just the littlest one.
So, growing up, you know, like how you said everyone knew each other, everyone on the block knew each other. Where was this because like women weren't going to work, or was someone always home? Do you think that played a part in it?
It may have played a part in it. I know that in my neighborhood, I mean, my mom worked. My mom was a registered nurse, but she worked her schedule out that she could work in the evening, so my father would be home. So we always had somebody there. Another woman in the neighborhood, again, was a nurse, so she could adjust her hours. But then I think a lot of them, though, the women were home more so than. I think I know with my mom, she had to go back to work when they had to buy a house. So, and they were luckily they could work it out that my father would work during the day, my mom would be working at night, so that there would always be somebody home. So.
Can you speak to any other ways that women might have been treated differently back then, or?
Not definitely. I know just growing up, though, sometimes you felt that you couldn't do certain things because you were a woman. I couldn't play sports because the Title IX hadn't come through. Any sports I played were just in school during phys ed classes, or they had a couple things after school that you could play just amongst yourselves, but there was no real sport activities. I mean, I played mostly on the playground because the neighborhood had mostly boys, so I played a lot of the games with the boys on the playground, with softball, riding bicycles, playing football, touch football, things like that.
Okay. Anything you can think of?
No.
Any little anecdotes you'd like to relate, or if not,
Not that I can think of.
Okay,
Well,
thank
you
you.
very much.